They told us the town of Zwolle was lost. They said it would take an entire division of artillery to clear out the SS. I told my commander I didn't need a division. I just needed a bag of grenades and the cover of night. It is April 13th, 1945. I am running through the cobblestone streets alone, firing my Sten gun at shadows, screaming commands to an army that doesn't exist. The Germans think they are surrounded by hundreds. They have no idea it is just me, the one-eyed ghost. I was born for trouble. Growing up in Montreal during the Depression, you didn't survive by being polite. You survived by swinging first. When the world went to war, I didn't join the army to be a hero. I joined because I wanted to fight. I was a French Canadian, a Quebecois, and I had a chip on my shoulder the size of a tank. I wanted to show the world that we were the toughest bastards in the British Empire. We landed on Juno Beach on D-Day, June 6, 1944. The sand was wet, the air was full of metal, and the noise was like the earth ripping apart. We pushed inland, fighting through the hedgerows of Normandy. It was brutal, close-quarters murder. But my war almost ended before it really began. A few weeks after the landing, I was on a reconnaissance patrol. We ran into a squad of SS troops. In the firefight, a phosphorus grenade exploded right next to me. The world went white. The burning chemical seared my face and claimed my left eye. I remember lying in the dirt, the pain blinding me, thinking, is this it? Is this how Léo Major goes out? They dragged me to a field hospital. The doctor took one look at my mangled face and started filling out the discharge papers. War is over for you, son, he said. You're going home. I sat up on the cot, blood dripping down my cheek, and grabbed his arm. Home? I spat. I aimed my rifle with my right eye. The left one was just extra. He thought I was delirious. I wasn't. I was furious. I walked out of that hospital before my wounds had even closed. I put on an eye patch, looking like a pirate in olive drab, and marched right back to my unit, the Régiment de la Chaudière. I told them I wasn't leaving until the job was done. By the autumn of 1944, we were in Holland, fighting in the Battle of the Scheldt. It was a miserable, flooded hellscape of mud and freezing rain. I was cold, wet, and missing an eye, but I was sharper than ever. One morning, I was scouting alone, always alone because I moved quieter that way, when I spotted a German patrol. 2 men. I captured them easily. But as I was marching them back, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A massive German garrison was dug in nearby. I was one man with one eye and a submachine gun. A smart man would have retreated. But like I said, I was never very good at following the rules. I watched them from the ditch, a commanding officer and his entire company, comfortable in their superiority. They thought they were safe. I adjusted my eye patch, checked the magazine on my Sten gun, and made a decision. I wasn't going to report their position. I was going to take it. I crept up on the sleeping sentry. Silence was my best weapon. I neutralized him without a sound and took his position. Then, I turned my attention to the commanding officer. I burst into his quarters, my weapon leveled at his chest before he could even reach for his Luger. I saw the fear in his eyes. He saw a madman covered in mud, grinning like a wolf. "The war is over for you," I told him in French. "Surrender your men, or I call down the artillery." It was a bluff. I had no radio, no artillery support, nothing but my own arrogance. But he didn't know that. He looked at my wild expression and believed me. He surrendered. What happened next was a scene from a comedy, if it weren't so deadly serious. I marched the officer out and forced him to order his men to surrender. One by one, they came out with their hands up. I started marching them back toward the Canadian lines. But as we walked, nearby German units realized what was happening. They opened fire. Not on me, but on their own surrendering comrades. Chaos erupted. I dove for cover, firing back, protecting my prisoners. I managed to single-handedly fight off the attacking Germans while keeping 93 prisoners in line. 93. I marched them all the way back to the Allied camp. The sentries at the gate nearly fainted. They asked, "Where is the rest of your company, Major?" I lit a cigarette and pointed a thumb over my shoulder. "It's just me," I said. "General Montgomery, the big British commander, wanted to give me the Distinguished Conduct Medal. It was a huge honor. But I didn't care about medals from officers who sat in tents drinking tea while we bled in the mud. Montgomery was, in my opinion, incompetent. I told the officers, 'You can keep your medal. I fight for my friends, not for a general.' I turned it down. They thought I was insane. Maybe I was, but I wasn't fighting for brass. I was fighting because the job wasn't finished. And the biggest job was still to come. A city called Zwolle was waiting, and it was about to meet the devil himself. April 1945. The war was winding down, but the Germans in the Dutch city of Zwolle hadn't got the memo. They were dug in deep, ready to burn the city to the ground rather than surrender. My commanding officer called me and my best friend, Willie Arsenault, into his tent. "The artillery starts at dawn," he said. "We're going to level the city to drive them out." I looked at the map. Zwolle was a beautiful, ancient place. Thousands of civilians still lived there. "Give us a chance first," I said. "Let Willie and me go in tonight. Just the two of us. We'll see if we can find the German commander and convince him it's over." The CO laughed, but he gave us until dawn. We slipped into the city limits under the cover of a thick, freezing mist. It was quiet. Too quiet. We crept along a railroad track, our boots barely making a sound on the gravel. Suddenly, a machine gun burst tore through the silence. Willie fell. I crawled to him, but it was too late. My best friend, the man who had survived the beaches and the mud with me, died in the dirt of a railroad embankment. Something inside me shattered. I didn't feel grief. I felt a cold, white-hot rage. I grabbed Willie's bag of grenades and slung it over my shoulder. I picked up his Sten gun. Now I had two. "You killed him," I whispered to the dark city. "Now I'm going to kill all of you." I became a whirlwind. I didn't hide anymore. I ran through the streets like a maniac. I threw grenades into every German position I saw. I fired bursts of machine gun fire into the air, screaming orders to imaginary platoons. "First company, flank left. Second company, heavy fire on the square." I ran down an alley, fired a burst, then sprinted to the next street and threw a grenade. I wanted them to think they were under attack by an entire Canadian regiment. I found a German officer drinking in a bar. I kicked the door open, leveled my gun at him, and told him the city was surrounded by tanks. "Leave now," I lied, "or you will all die." He ran to tell his superiors. The panic spread like wildfire. Germans started abandoning their posts, terrified of the massive army that had breached their lines. They didn't know it was just one angry, one-eyed Canadian running circles around them in the dark. I burned down the Gestapo headquarters just for good measure. For hours, I fought a war against an entire garrison by myself, fueled by nothing but hatred and adrenaline. By dawn, the shooting stopped. The silence that fell over Zwolle was heavy. I was exhausted. My hands were blistered, my uniform was torn, and I was covered in soot. I walked cautiously toward the town square, expecting a final ambush. Instead, I saw a woman open her shutters. She looked at me, a lone, filthy soldier standing in the middle of the street. Then she looked around. No Germans. She ran out and hugged me. Then the doors opened. People poured into the streets. They were crying, laughing, cheering. The Germans had fled. An entire garrison of SS troops, terrified of the Canadian army, had retreated across the river. I stood there, leaning on my Sten gun, as the town of Zwolle realized they had been liberated not by a division, but by one man who was too stubborn to sleep. I retrieved Willie's body. I made sure he was buried with honor. He was the real hero that night. His death was the spark that burned the Germans out. I survived the war, but I wasn't done fighting. When the Korean War broke out years later, they asked me to come back. They needed the one-eyed ghost. I led a squad of snipers and scouts. In one battle, my small team of 18 men held a hill against 14,000 Chinese soldiers for 3 days. They told us to retreat. I told them to go to hell. We held the hill. I died an old man in 2008, in a hospital bed, not a trench. They say I was the only soldier in the British Commonwealth to receive the Distinguished Conduct Medal in 2 separate wars. But I didn't care about the medals. I cared that the people of Zwolle were free. Every year, even when I was old and grey, I would go back to that town. They treated me like a king. They never forgot the night the devil came to town to drive out the demons. People call me a hero. I say I was just a man who didn't like bullies. And if you ever find yourself outnumbered, outgunned, and alone in the dark, just remember Léo Major. Remember that one eye is enough to see the path, and one man is enough to start a revolution.